Okay, so let's get started. And you probably know I've met most of you, if not all of you. But I'm Alan Rice. I'm going to be your flight instructor today, and the operating partner for the company. And my business partner and I, Bill Weidecker, started this adventure a long time ago, 2005. So we're starting our 11th year, and having a great time, surrounded by a lot of great people, including yourselves. So it's been a wonderful time for us, and we see a great market coming in the next few years, not without adjustments, but still a great market. Okay? So what let's talk about some mechanics. Some of you have a book. I would love it. I think it's great if you were to take it down to Staples and just ask them to put it in a 3-ring binder, because now it's not a book. It's not a novel anymore. It becomes a reference book, a manual. And as you can see, this was my original book that I got, and I've manualized it many, many ways and many, many times. If you are interested, or if this class grips you to the degree that you love the 24 topics, you can actually purchase one that has tabs that are already pre-marked with all the 24 topics and place marked, if that is of interest to you. Okay? But you can just take a regular old book and do it as well. Okay? Very good. So let's take a look, if we can. I've given you all an outline of the program today, and the screens, the slides are going to be the same on the screen as well. So the 24 topics. The 24 topics are really the key issues, the key aspects for an experienced agent. How many of you consider yourselves to be an experienced agent? Okay? If you've been in the business for more than an hour, I want you to think of yourself as someone who has had experience in being an agent. Now, some of us have more experience. I probably am the most tenure. Well, I don't know. Tracy, how long have you been in the business?
Almost 28 years.
28 years. So I've just barely eked by her with 30 years. But regardless, we're on this constant journey, if you will, this constant process of learning, and a commitment to continuous learning is an important component for us to get better with our skills. Would you agree with that? Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at these 24 topics and really talk about them and see how they relate to formulating your business. So each topic has associated pages in your book, and so as you go through this, if you have stickies or note paper, make this a working document for you, a reference manual that you can go back to. And I'm going to tell you what pages are referenced in the book. We're going to be reading part of the book today. So commit them to memory, tab them, and be prepared to share them as well, because people will come up to you and ask you a question while you're walking around the market center and say, you know, I was wondering about blah, 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 and now you, as a result of this class, have got some additional information that you can help share. Okay? Okay. So let's take a look, if we can. And on your page 23 in the manual, let's take a look at one of the foundational concepts. It starts on 22, big questions and the top of the world. And you can see on your slide it says, think big, aim high, act bold, and live large. So when I say to you, think big in your real estate business, what does that mean to you? Think big.
Big bucks.
Okay, big bucks.
More listings.
More listings.
Big goals.
Big goals. Okay? So when we think big, what happens inside of our minds? What starts to happen with our thinking when we start to think big?
try to determine how we're going to get there.
Okay, immediately many of us are going to start to think, okay, how do I get there? And now I don't want you to worry about that right now, because sometimes if we worry about the journey or the path, what happens to the way we think? Start to think smaller, have limited thinking, because we say, well, gosh, I'm not exactly sure how to get to here, so I better start here. I want you to think big, okay, and aim high. Now let's just talk about goal setting for a moment. What is the normal human response most people have to goal setting? If I say to you, hey, tell me, what's your goal for income for the next 12 months? What kind of response would you make to that? What you think you can do. Thank you, Rachel. So a lot of times what happens is we actually think about what it is that we can do as opposed to thinking about what might be possible at a much bigger level. So I want you to really, and you're going to have to push yourself on this, I want you to really get comfortable with thinking big. Now I'm going to make an analogy for you around the benefits of this whole thing about thinking big. If you think big, what might be a number that you would think for income that to you would be a big number? It's not a trick question.
500,000.
500,000. So an income number of 500,000 might be a, all of a sudden,
Need help?
I guess so. What I'm afraid of is I'm going to open this and spill it all over Janet. No. So 500,000 might be a big number for some of you. Would that be a true statement?
Yeah.
Now, if you set your sights around $500,000 worth of income, what kind of systems and models and things do you think you have to put in place? Can you reach 500,000 with just you?
No.
No. So what's going to be necessary, Pauline?
We need admin help. We need maybe a buyer's agent.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a buyer's agent. What else might you need? An executive assistant, right? What else might you need?
Transaction.
Yeah, a couple of transactions are probably going to be needed, right? Oh, transaction coordinator. But your point is a good one. We're going to have to figure out, okay, I've got 500,000 in terms of an income number. What does that really mean in terms of transactions, and how do we figure that out? So that's going to be part of it as well. What else will we have to think about?
How do we get the leads?
Okay. Yeah, so now we got to think about leads and all that kind of stuff. Now, if we think in terms of a $500,000 net income plan, and we sort of build what I'm going to call a highway or a pathway or a channel or a tunnel that can handle what's necessary for $500,000 of income, then we've already put all the infrastructure in place. So even though we might only have one lane of traffic or maybe even 2 lanes of traffic, we've got a 9-lane highway already mapped out either in our mind or in reality, so that when traffic starts to increase, we don't have to shut down the whole highway to add lanes. Does that make sense?
Right.
So the whole idea about thinking big and aiming high is, by aiming high, our thinking starts to be at a very different level. We start to think more systematically as opposed to onesie, twosie kind of transactions. And as a result of that, we begin to put in place things that can help us in a much more crowded or much higher level of activity. Okay? Okay, so MREA is about thinking big, aiming high, acting bold, and living large. Now, when we aim high, what happens with human beings when we start to approach the finish line? When we see the finish line, it's right there. What happens to us typically either in our minds or in our activities when we can see the finish line? What do we tend to do? We tend to slow down and relax. And so again, a benefit of aiming high is that we keep that expectation out in front of us, and it keeps us sprinting through a particular point. We're not slowing down because we can see the finish line. Does it,
Happened in the Daytona 500 this week.
I didn't see that. What?
Pulled that up at the very end,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody went by him and beat him by the closest race in history.
Yeah, just probably because the finish line was very evident and obvious to that person, and so relaxed for a second. So that's what the MREA tends to be all about. What I want you to do is I want you to look at your books on page. Well, I'm going to start you a little bit before that. I'm going to have you look at page 35. And it talks about modeling. Tell me what modeling is to you. When I say modeling, what is modeling?
Shaping, emulating, and mimicking.
Mimicking, emulating, who? Yeah, people who have lived before us and have demonstrated a result that we are looking for. That is what modeling is. And really, to develop a business. Now, you're all developing a real estate business, right? You're not a salesperson who is focused on production for for a company. You are a company. You have your own business. So the way businesses grow and develop is to either replicate other successful businesses in that industry or to come up with something totally creative, something that is totally new. How many of you are feeling like you're ready to create a new way of doing real estate? Anybody? Okay. So that may be something for you to pursue, but what I'm going to say to you is this. Let's look at models. Let's look at people who have lived before us and who have a result that we are interested in and do what they do. Okay? And then we can get creative after that. So let's just take a look here. I'm going to point you to, in the first paragraph under modeling, this is by Gary. And what I've highlighted is that where he's talking about his Baylor professor, and he said, son, see where the quote marks are there? Son, you're not the first person to want to have a successful career. You're not the first person to have dreams you want to fulfill. You need to realize that people have lived before you, and you might be wise to slow down for just a second and figure out what they learned on their journey before you start your own. Okay? Now, we've been told that many times through our lives, and to the degree to which we've actually done that varies. But the point is, let's find people who have had successful and results that you're interested in terms of the real estate business, and do what they have done. Does anyone come to mind? We don't have to yell out names or anything. When I say, think about a very successful real estate professional that you would use as a model, does anyone come to mind?
You,
What's that?
you,
Oh, thank you.
that is true.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. But I would also say, you know, if someone comes to mind, it may be somebody that you know or somebody who you know of. And so I would just make a note in your book and maybe write down 2 or 3 names of people who emulate, who personify for you that stature of modeling. Who would you like to be like? Who would you like to emulate in the real estate business? Go ahead and write down a name or 2 there. And it doesn't mean that you're locked in forever. But at least at this juncture, who is that? Everybody have a name or 2? Okay. So now what I want you to do is I want you to think about watching that person or those people in terms of what they do. When I first got in the real estate business, you know, we used to, the training program was, well, it was 2 components. It was very complicated. The first part of the training program was we got handed a telephone book and a desk with a phone on it, and the course went something like this. Okay, Adam, here you go. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions. That was the. Anybody else participate in that training program? Yeah, that was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was the one that said, "Here you go, Susan. Here's the phone book. Good luck."
You sat down with us, remember?
Yeah, oh yeah, I do. So that was one part of the training program in terms of prospecting. So the other thing is we want to make sure that we watch people who are successful and then do what they do. So if we take a look at page 36, there's a few quotes there. And the first one is from Tony Robbins, who said, "Long ago I realized that success leaves clues. People who produce outstanding results do specific things to create those results." The second passage, and I would love for you to highlight, circle, asterisk, whatever you'd like to, so that it brings attention back to you later. Actions are the source of all results. Actions are the source of all results. The process of discovering exactly and specifically what people do to produce a specific result is called modeling. Well, let me ask this question. How many of you are interested in having predictable income in your real estate business? Just raise your hand. Who's up for predictable income? Okay. So now, if we are looking for predictable income, the question is, what creates predictability of income in real estate?
Consistency.
Okay, systems, actions. Rachel, you said leads.
Consistent process.
Consistent process.
Predictable process.
Yeah. So we know that results, see, it's what we end up doing is we look at people and we look at these models and we say, wow, they made $500,000. I mean, I want to do that. I mean, that's like, and they're only in the business 2 years. That's unbelievable. What was the answer? What was the key thing? And what we find is it is activities, predictable activities, that create predictable results. So what do you suppose the predictable activities are that actually create predictable results? It comes down to lead generation. And you're going to hear that, from me and from us many, many times, is that it comes down to lead generation. No matter what business we're in, if you are starting a liquor store, well, that's state-run, so that won't. If you're starting a convenience store, you're starting a laundromat, you're starting a legal practice, you're starting a dental practice, all of those professionals, what must they do? Lead, generate, get customers, get clients. So owning a business inherent in owning a business like you, includes lead generation. Okay? So it is the activities, and we're going to talk about what those predictable activities are. Passage 3, to me, modeling is the pathway to excellence. The movers and shakers of the world are often professional modelers. What did Steve Jobs invent? What did he invent? He worked for Apple. What did he invent? He didn't invent anything.
Right, exactly.
He did not invent a thing. What did he do?
Improved it, made it for
So-
personal rather than corporation.
He made improvements. He packaged. He took things that were already in existence and put it in a package that had an appeal, and didn't really invent anything. Okay? Now, you might say, well, he came up with the iPhone. Okay, yeah, okay, he came up with the iPhone, but mobile phones were in existence, right? I mean, he didn't invent mobile phones? Did he put a different face on it? Did he put, some function? Exactly. But the point is that most highly successful people are wonderful modelers. They model what other people have done that work, and then you add creativity afterward. Okay? So, passage number 4. To model excellence, you should be a detective, an investigator, someone who asks a lot of questions and tracks down all the clues to what produces excellence. Building from the successes of others is one of the fundamental aspects of most learning. Now you can go on and read there where Gary says a light bulb went off. He had a big aha moment at that point in time about how that would relate to the real estate business. Let's take a look at page 37. You can see on the graph here that it is through the establishment of models, and I just want you to look at that second paragraph, the first paragraph. It says, at the same time, I do think that it would be a mistake to discard creativity. Without a doubt, we have been innovative in our real estate business. The trick to getting, and here again I'm highlighting, underlining, or whatever, the trick to getting the most out of our creativity is to always start with a set of proven foundational models for success. Underline, asterisk, highlight. Once we find success with our initial models, we can then allow for creative thinking. Only after we've followed the models do we allow ourselves to tweak, innovate, fiddle. The key to taking this approach is avoiding creative innovation ahead of the effective implementation of proven foundational models. Now, the point I want to make with you is this. We're going to talk about what those proven foundational models are and what they center around. And the thing is, because of our nature, because of the kind of people that we are, what kind of people are we? How do you describe yourself? What kind of a person are you?
Habit.
You're what?
Creature of habit.
Okay, you're a creature of habit. In the 4 personality types, are you driven? Are you interpersonal? Are you stable? Or are you compliant?
I.
You're high I. What does that mean?
Interpersonal.
Interpersonal. You love people, right? How many of you got into real estate because you love homes and you love people? Okay? How many of you have been in the real estate business for more than a year now? How do you feel about people now? See, we're people. We tend to be in sales. We tend to be people. And as a result of that, we don't really want to, or have the nature, or have the sort of inclination to look at things like models. So we want to be with people. We want to interact. We want to network. You know how we go out and network in the afternoon? That kind of thing. So that's where we have to fight that a little bit. So it's the implementation of foundational models. For those of you who went to family reunion, you probably heard Gary say from the stage, you have to embrace the boring. Get comfortable with the boring. What's the boring?
Lead generation.
Lead generation. Lead generation is the, quote, boring. It's the non-excitement part of it, because we love the negotiation. We love going in and telling people what, and doing, CMAs. We love working with people. The boring part, to some degree, is that lead generation aspect. Now, what we also know is that by doing that regularly, by committing to that and executing lead generation regularly, what happens? Susan, what?
I said it just becomes a habit.
Becomes a habit. It get what?
Gets easier.
It gets easier. Why does it get easier?
You practice a lot.
Right. Now my amount of self-discipline goes down by because it now becomes a habit and it requires less willpower. What else happens to things that you do regularly? How does that affect you? How well? You become more efficient. You get more confidence. You start to develop systems. You can see things. See, John Maxwell will tell us that we develop intuition. We become intuitive in certain areas. How many of you consider yourself to be an intuitive individual? In what areas?
Reading other people.
Okay, reading other people. What else? That's it? That's all you're going to come up with? What else are you intuitive in?
Marketing, the market, real estate information,
Okay, and how do we become intuitive in the market and real estate information?
learning it.
By learning it. So we become intuitive in those areas where we have experience and we have commitment and knowledge with regularity. See, what happens is we run into the spikes or peaks and valleys of income in real estate because we lead generate like crazy when we first get into the business. And what happens when we lead generate? We get business. And then what happens when we get business?
You don't lead generate.
We stop because we have to
Work for it.
service, right? We have to service. And so then we say, okay, I got to work on all these things. I got to service all this. So what happens to lead generation? Doesn't happen. And then we close all those great listings that we got 90 or 120 days later, and then what are we looking at? Nothing. So we get into this. So what we want to do is we want to have that reliability of consistency of lead generation regularly. You get better at it. It takes less willpower. It becomes habit. And anything becomes habit, and you sort of go through it a little bit rote, starts to feel what? Boring. Embrace the boring. That's what foundational aspects actually are built on, is that reliability. And sometimes that feels boring. You only have to be bored for how many hours a day?
3.
Yeah, 2 to 3. Just be bored 2 to 3 hours a day. Okay? Okay. Let's take a look on page 37. We talked about starting with fundamental models and then adding creativity. What might be some examples of creativity that we would add in our real estate business?
Different references.
Yeah, so
Promotional ads.
promotional ads. It might be something around marketing, or how we're marketing properties or marketing ourselves. What other things can we be creative about beyond the model?
Methods of communication, we could vary it up.
Yeah, so we might have a social media initiative. We might do a combination of emails, and it might be text, and it might be social media. So we can get creative. There are areas where we can create some creativity, right? What's the foundational element, whether we're texting, emailing, or social media? What's the model part?
Lead generation.
Lead generation and being in contact with your database, your sphere of influence. How many of you were at the meeting yesterday? Okay. Did you hear anybody say something about, yeah, we got business from this particular thing, but we also got a referral from somebody else who was actually a previous customer of ours, and shame on us for not staying in touch with our sphere of influence.
What about the agent that got the referral from the buyer who bought her listings free?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's where creativity comes in. Okay. Let's take a look on 38. We're going to talk about natural ability and achievement ceilings. Who can tell me what this chart means? How many of you have seen this chart before? Okay. What is this? Who'd like to give me an interpretation of what this means? I say, who'd like to give me an interpretation of, come on guys, you're leaders, right? Leaders take charge, stand up. Let's have an explanation.
Natural ability is only going to take you so far.
Natural ability can only take you so far. What else is in here?
Doing the same thing over and over, you need to make tweaks to it. You need to improve it to break through, to make
It's
change.
not working.
Okay, yep, so you need to make tweaks to it. What else? Let's look at that bottom part of the page or the graph. It says natural ability. What do we call this chart, by the way?
Breaking through to higher achievement.
Okay, now that I know you all can read, there's another name for the chart. What do we call the chart? E2P. Entrepreneurial to purposeful. So what we see here on this page is we start in the business with this natural ability. We love people and we love homes. And we have a natural ability to be able to interact with people. And we're able to do that. We're able to talk, string more than 4 words together in a sentence that makes sense. We've got all that natural ability. And so we enter the business and we have this trajectory of success. And all of a sudden we are on a roll here, and then we hit, has this ever happened to any of you? You hit a ceiling. What happened? Is this just the real estate business, by the way? No. What happened?
You've reached the peak of what you could do with that ability. Now you need new ability.
Right.
You need to learn new things.
So now we hit this natural ceiling of achievement, and now our trajectory begins to go in the opposite direction, and sort of in a downward trajectory. And so what oftentimes happens with most people, not anyone in this room, but what happens with most people when we start to experience a downward trajectory in our business or our business experience?
Quit.
We quit. What else do we do?
Blame it on everything but
We make excuses. We cry. We say it's the market. We say it's the
company.
We say it's the peers. It was my parents. This is why it's going in the wrong direction. If I had just gone to private school, it must have been because I had to do the dishes every night. We start coming up with all these reasons, and so what happens is our business starts to go in this downward trajectory. What we then employ are foundational models. And you can see that there's actually a key to the sort of the shapes, because to me this is what I call, and you might want to write this down on it, is a pivot point. It's a pivot point. It's a basis that is stable, that I can actually change directions. I can plant my pivot foot and actually move in a different direction as a result of having these foundational models in place. And as a result of having that pivot, now I'm able to actually redirect the trajectory of my business, and I go through a breakthrough. Now here's the good news. Those of you that have gone to Bold, you know this. That what always precedes a breakthrough? A breakdown. So remember I told you to embrace boredom? Okay, I want you to race to a breakdown. How many of you have ever had a breakdown? Okay. How many of you are having a breakdown right now? Okay. So the good news is this. If you're having a breakdown always precedes a breakthrough. So quickly get to as many breakdowns as you can. Now what happens when we have a breakdown? What happens? What do we do? I'm sorry, I think this is my phone. What do we do when we have a breakdown? Okay. There's always the alcohol thing. Yeah. Eat, drink. Okay. Yeah.
I think when you start to have, I know when you start to have the breakdown, you become very intimidated by getting to a breakthrough. So a lot of fear comes into place, and the what ifs and doubt, lack of conviction for what you were looking to attain to do. It's far more comfortable to be a natural ability because I can manage that.
Right.
But if I want to go anywhere, it's very fearful to get through that breakthrough. So in the breakdown, you come up with a lot of reasons why you can't. And a lot of that, for me anyways, is fear-based, fear of failure.
Sure. Yeah. And so what Darlene has pointed out is another asset for you to embrace. What would that be? Fear. Embrace. Race toward the fear. How many of you, if you were to think of if I asked you to close your eyes and think back over the course of your life to date, and think of the 3 or 4 events in your life that are most significant. You don't have to close your eyes because I know people get scared about that. But let's just say that you were to think back over the course of your life and bring to mind, bring to the forefront of your mind 3 or 4 events of significance in your life. What is the common theme amongst those 3 or 4 events?
Family?
Fear. And is that what happened to you? When you think of those events of significance, there's fear is an element, and then what happened?
You managed to grow.
You changed, you persevered, you pushed through. And so just think about that for a moment when we think back over the significant aspects or elements of our life, those things that might actually define our life, they all include the element of fear. And in addition to including the element of fear, they include the ability for us to push through that and grow. And that's what gives us confidence. So my point is this. In addition to embracing the breakdown, race toward the fear. And so now we have a breakthrough and we go into a new area, and now we can begin even to add some creativity because we have fully executed and implemented the foundational models. What do I mean by fully executed and implemented foundational models? What does that mean?
You follow the model and you execute it. Have a plan in place to further.
Right. So what's an example of an element? Let's say it's adding an administrative assistant. So here's how some people execute the model. Oh, it says I need an executive assistant. Okay, Janet, do you want to be my executive assistant? Say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay, I did that part. Is that fully implementing? No. So it's fully implementing. That means a role description. That means regular conversations. That means having great conversations, and it also means having conversations around areas of improvement and so forth. That's fully executing. What is the biggest reason why teams fail?
They didn't hire the right people.
Right person on the bus, wrong seat. Okay? So it's not about the person, it's the seat that they are occupying. So, and oftentimes that's because we hire out of necessity, desperation, my hair's on fire, I don't know what I'm going to do. Here, come here, I need you. That kind of mentality. So we should constantly be on talent search. When we talked about building a 9-lane highway, that means constantly being on talent search for my next hire, whatever that might be. It might be the first hire is always an administrative assistant. Constantly looking for that. Constantly. When I'm out for dinner, when I'm at the gym, always looking. Gee, I wonder if that person would be a candidate to be an executive assistant. So we get into here and we add creativity. Now we've got an improved model, and then we break into yet another level. Now we already talked about that this is not just about the real estate business. What is this chart also about? Life. This is a chart of life. I mean, you can say, all right, this is my chart around my family relationships. Anybody ever have a downward trajectory in their family relationships? I mean, or is it just me? Okay. Could this also be my social relationships? Could it be my involvement in community organization? It relates to everything. So it is a constant evolutionary process. Okay? Okay. let's take a look at from page 40 to 44. We're going to look at something that we don't really spend a lot of time with, I don't think. And now it has new meaning for me in preparing to talk with you today. And that is, you've probably seen this chart before, the 3 L's of real estate. Yes? Okay. And so what element is on the base of this triangle? Leads. So we've already talked about and acknowledged the importance of leads in our business. That is the base, that is the foundational element, is leads. So in the narrative there, it says, the last line on page 40, to succeed in real estate, you must have client leads. It's just that simple. When we're starting out in business, the one thing is leads. That's all we should be worried about. That's all we should be focused on. Oh, well, I've got to learn the market. No. Leads. Well, how will I deal with a lead unless I know about the market? Find leads. You're not going to be able to address every particular market until you know who you're going to be talking with. So it all begins with leads. And you've got to be able to have the confidence that no matter what lead comes your way, you're going to be able to determine whether it's something that you can work with. You might say, oh my gosh, you want to know about Lake Winnipesaukee? I've never been to Lake Winnipesaukee. Are you going to work with that lead?
Refer it out to somebody who does.
The answer is you're either going to learn about Lake Winnipesaukee or you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to refer that out to somebody who does and move on to the next lead. So the point is, we can't always be trying to get ready because we're never going to always be ready. Okay? That second paragraph, our first paragraph on page 41 says, this is Keller talking, he says, I remember reading an article written by a fellow real estate agent who was distressed to learn that he was also in the lead generation business. When we own a business, that's what we're in. Now, if somebody says, well, I don't want to do that, I'd rather be like an employee, well, then that's different. Then you're not going to be a business owner. And right now, you're a business owner. Okay? So it all comes down to leads. The second thing, on the left-hand side, the second part of the pyramid is listings. And it's referred to here as the gift of the real estate gods. What does that mean to you? Why do you suppose he refers to it as the gift of the real estate gods?
We used to say list to last.
That's right, list to last, absolutely.
They bring buyers.
Yeah.
It just perpetuates the business, usually brings more than one transaction.
So buyers are generated from listings, okay? So that's one reason, right, to get listings. What else about listings make it? I'm sorry, Pauline?
Less time consuming.
Less time consuming. So that you're not taking listings out in your car, right, and driving the home around trying to visit buyers, are you? That's not how it works. So the point is that once you take a listing, it has a more schedule control for you as a result of having a listing as opposed to a buyer. What else about listings make it extremely important for you to focus there? There's exposure. So there's the whole marketing thing. So I've got this listing, and now I've got my sign with my contact, my information, and the people that drive by that particular street drive by. There's 15,000 cars a day, and that reinforces subliminally that I've got a lot of listings, right? Because the person goes by it all the time. What else about a listing?
Generates more leads.
Generates more buyer leads. What about seller leads?
Might on the neighbors, right?
Yeah, might on the neighbors, Yeah, I always list with John. Wow. Okay, I'm going to call him. So it not only generates buyer leads, a listing also generates seller leads. There's one more element that I'm looking for that listings provide at a higher level than on the buy side. What might that be? A paycheck, yeah.
Control the income.
Yeah, you have a better chance of controlling the income. Leverage, in what way, Tracy?
Well, just that they're there, you have them, and it leverages your ability to get other listings
Yep.
and other buyers.
Yeah. Here's the one other aspect that I think, and I'm interested in your perspective. I think you have to know the market at a little bit different level when you list a house. Would you agree with me on that? And isn't that really a little bit of our fear before we take a listing? Or was it just me? Right? We say, oh my gosh, I got to make sure that I get this right because I'm going to take this person's home as a listing. I want to make sure I have it right. So the point is that we get really good at evaluating the market when we focus on listings. Now, do we need to do that also with buyer clients? Yeah, but I just think it's at a little bit higher level. Would you agree? Yeah. So that's the advantage of listings. That's why we don't have buyers on that triangle. It is the listing that A, generates additional business. How many buyers typically does a listing generate? At least one, usually two, and sometimes many more than that. So it's like at least one for one, and in some cases it's 2 or 3 for one. Now, that's a big thing, okay? That time does not always translate into money, because haven't we always said that? Time is money. Yeah, right? Time is money. Well, that's not necessarily true. And this is what happens with us in developing our real estate business. So many times I'll talk with agents who are saying, you know what, I'm at this particular level of production. I'm at 4 million, I'm at 5 million, I'm at 7 million. I'm earning, $150,000, $130,000, and we start talking about getting to 250. And people say, oh, I'm working like crazy now. I'm working 70, 80 hours a week now, and I'm making 150. You think to make 250? Let's see. That means I'm going to have to go to 120 hours. And it's at that particular juncture that it starts to really put us in a position to flip. That time, by adding leverage, time does not equal money. That you can actually earn more money and spend less time. And when I do this in business planning clinic, when I talk with agents individually, this is one of the hardest concepts that people struggle with. Because all of our upbringing, or most of our upbringing, has been, if you want to do better, then work harder. You want to get better at this? Put in more time. And that works to a certain degree, but there comes a point in time where leverage actually flips that. And it's at that cusp that so many people have difficulty, and understandably so, making that transference. Because right now I'm earning $125,000 and I'm working 60 hours. I want to make $250. That means I got to work 120 hours. And it doesn't have to be that way. So leverage becomes a very important element, but we must believe that we can actually earn more and invest less time. When Bill and I first started the company, it was Michelle mentioned it. 2 guys on a laptop. We did everything. If we weren't in our little office, we weren't open. One of us had to be there. And that meant, if the trash was full, who emptied the trash? I did. When we needed to do a transmittal, I'd do the transmittal. When we needed, to order signs, I ordered signs. What the hell did Bill do? No. We shared all, we would do everything. And if I was sick or couldn't come in, or I was on an appointment and Bill was on an appointment, were we open? No, we weren't open. So the point is, until you get to a certain point, we worked a lot. Until you get to a certain point where you can start to employ leverage. And that doesn't mean that all of a sudden at the very beginning we were keeping all the money. And how much money was there at the very beginning? Zip. And we got to keep it all. Right? And then through the development and over time, when we started to actually have people join us and so forth, that is what we call leverage. The same thing works for you. The same thing works for you.